Hello, everybody. I'm Brandon Von Kannewurff, co-president of the MBA Energy Club here at Fuqua, and I'm so excited to talk to you all about our favorite topic, the energy thing here at Fuqua. So Fuqua and the MBA Energy Club in particular was one of the key reasons why I decided to apply and then ultimately come here to Duke, and so I'm really excited to share that with you all. To kick things off, we'll do a quick introduction, go through a few background questions before diving into all of y'all's Q&A. So please submit that here in the chat. So to begin, again, I'm Brandon Von Kannewurff. Before coming here to Fuqua, I spent 3 years working in corporate finance at Dominion Energy. And then here at Fuqua, I interned at a solar developer called BayWa before spending a summer internship at TerraPower, a small modular nuclear company based out of Seattle. And in true Fuqua fashion, wanted to share a quick fun fact, hopefully give you all some inspiration as you all are thinking through this application. But on the very first night that we brought home our dog Millie, she woke us up at 4 a.m. to alert us of a dumpster fire outside of our first floor apartment window. And
Thank God for Millie.
Thank God for Millie. Yes, see if Rumi, your new puppy, will do the same.
Hi everyone, so nice to have you join us here today. My name is Jenna Bhaloo, and I'm also a second year here at Fuqua. Brandon and I are actually in the same section, and that's how we met. Pre-Fuqua, I actually worked in pharma consulting. My background was actually in public health, and I have an MPH in global health and program management. So worked at a hospital in Boston for a few years and then shifted into pharma consulting. Honestly, came to Fuqua and stumbled upon energy and all things ClimateCAP, and became really just enthralled with it all and wanted to learn as much as I could, and still can. And so ended up doing an internship through mentored study with a startup that just finished their Series A called Charger Help based in LA, and then also worked with Grove Capital, which was an early stage VC, and then did my internship at AES on the valuation and new business models team. So it's been a whirlwind of a journey, but I'm really excited to share it with you and hear what questions you have. And fun fact, so I was the lead violinist for the opening act of Jay-Z and Young Jeezy's act at the 2009 BET Hip Hop Awards in Atlanta. So that was a really cool experience, and I don't know, I was just at the right place at the right time, I suppose.
I don't know about that. That's always wonderful to hear. So we'll go to a few background questions. I think one thing that you heard in both Jenna's comments and my comments are not only the classes you can get involved in here at Fuqua, but also the internships, ways that you can really dive into the experience here. So to go into a little background, wanted to first start with the purpose of the club. Got to start with the mission statement. So the mission of our Duke MBA Energy Club is to educate students and facilitate engagement in all aspects of the energy industry and the energy transition. And so we do this through a handful of ways that I'll touch on here, and we can go in more detail later. First, through structured career prep to help students get involved and understand the industry landscape. Second, through Energy Week. If you all are familiar, Energy Week is our kind of cornerstone event across the Duke University. And specifically, the MBA Energy Club helps lead the CASE competition and the Energy Conference, which is the second largest energy conference, a student-run energy conference in the U.S. And then finally, being a hub for the broader Duke energy community. There's a really strong energy ecosystem, not just at Fuqua, but across the broader Duke community. And we really serve as kind of the hub for those activities.
Yeah, it sounds really cool, and I promise you it really is. So you're probably wondering, what are some of the activities that the Energy Club provides and, what you can get involved in. So one is the Energy Conference. As Brandon mentioned, it's completely student-led, and so you have the opportunity to lead that conference, be the co-chairs, or help organize the logistics and find speakers and panelists and things like that. And it's a really incredible conference because it's well attended not only by Duke students, but also faculty, industry experts, other students from other schools, including MBAs and undergraduate and law schools and policy schools and environment schools. So it's really, really a great networking opportunity. The other thing that I think is really awesome that Energy Club does is called Week in Cities, which essentially takes you to a city to learn about the energy or climate ecosystem in that city. So for this year, we actually focused in on Durham and the surrounding Durham, Charlotte communities and got to visit a number of really interesting companies. Do you want to tell us what they were?
Sure. We visited a few solar developers, Pine Gate Renewables based out of Asheville, Cypress Creek Renewables around the area, and Strata Solar, which is based here in Durham. Then we transitioned to, in Charlotte, we visited Albemarle Mining, which is a lithium extraction company, which a former MBA club, Energy Club co-president, Diana Rowe, is now leading the global marketing team. And then another local company that I think is really exciting is called Net Power. The CFO is a Fuqua alum. They just went public via SPAC. They're a very interesting carbon capture or integrated carbon capture solutions company based right out here. And we got to go visit them, see the CFO, and learn a lot more about the interesting technology.
Yeah, and I think just touching on kind of the alumni piece is that, at least in my case, and I'm sure in your case too, I found the alum to be like truly amazing. Like, no, there hasn't been one person who has to, like, what I'm trying to say is everyone is willing to talk to you, and I think that just extends to like the culture at Team Fuqua in general, just like the ability to want to give back and pay it forward because they received that type of help and support during their journey. And so I think that goes a long way. And the alum and the energy climate community at Fuqua and even beyond, extending into Duke, is truly incredible. A couple other activities is just some of the more formal programming at Fuqua. So the Edge Center, as well as different classes you can take. Fuqua has 2 concentrations within the energy realm. So we've got the energy finance concentration as well as the energy and environment concentration. And I think those are pretty unique for MBA programs to actually be able to allow you to concentrate in these topics. And then finally, a pretty new initiative within the past year has been with our Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital Club. They basically have these industry groups, and so this year we've had our first like energy climate tech industry group, in which it's essentially a community of people who are interested in startups and VC, or whether that be now, like during their MBA careers, or post MBA, to kind of explore what that looks like, what are career options, who are the right people to talk to, and we usually meet like once a term or once a month to try to like build those connections and also talk about different things. So we had actually an industry group meeting recently, and we talked about the ocean, which was really awesome.
Yeah, just last evening I was over listening to this with Jenna. It was a lot of fun. One other kind of question that we often get is how many members and how many active members we have at the community. I would say we have about 100 energy curious folks here at Fuqua, and then a core group of about 50 to 60 people who regularly show up to different events. But as we mentioned earlier, one of the things that I really want to emphasize in this discussion, because it's not often obvious as you're going through this process and you're searching through or comparing schools to each other, is just the strength of the broader energy ecosystem here at Duke. A lot of events that we do tap into the broader ecosystem. We'll partner with the Nicholas School, partner with the law school to have kind of these broader events and really, I guess, you mentioned other classes outside of Fuqua, so several of my favorite classes have come, not just in this community, but also the broader community have really strengthened my network by getting to meet these wonderful people in the Nicholas School as well.
And also just truly awesome professors. Like they are so well connected. It is crazy.
So maybe we can dive into classes really quickly here. Like what sort of classes we are involved in, how are the academics?
Sure.
Do you want to start with your favorite?
Sure. So for me, I knew when starting my MBA that there was a couple of skills that I wanted to build. One in finance, from not having a business background or coming from public health, I really wanted to build those skills. And then again, like I mentioned, kind of stumbled upon all things energy, so decided to pursue the energy finance concentration. And within that concentration, there's a couple of really cool classes that you have to take, one being corporate finance. but the energy-specific one is the EDGE seminar, which is hosted by Dan Vermeer in the fall and spring semesters, and it's basically like a seminar series course, and he brings in some really awesome speakers from all across the industry. One of my favorite ones from last year was Marcus Extevor from XPRIZE, who talked to us about carbon removal, and it was fascinating. And then the other class is Energy Markets and Innovation, and for me, I thought that was, not having any energy background whatsoever, I thought that class was just a very good level set about like, how does this all work? Like, what are the implications? Why are power markets so important? And then I'm currently taking a class with Chris Wadding. It's called ClimateTech Startups and Investors, and it's all about ClimateTech VC essentially. So we had a guest speaker from ClimateTech VC itself, Sophie Purdom, and you're in that class too, actually. And just some really, really incredible speakers from the investing side, but also the startup side as well.
And just to add on to that, one of my favorite classes here at Fuqua was actually a class where we were on a team together, project finance, with Professor John Bewley. I'm mentioning that specifically because an alum of Fuqua, alum of the Energy Club, really wanted to dive deeper into project finance, believed that this structure called tax equity was really essential to know and really be familiar with in the energy industry. And so he kept bugging the professor to get this class started, and over time they were eventually able to create this class that's been, I think, running for the past 6 or 7 years, and was kind of founded by the Energy Club here. And so maybe a few other mentions of courses outside of Fuqua. Two of my favorites are a power markets class that I struggled through at the Nicholas School that really gave a deep dive into the structure of organized ISOs and RTOs here in the U.S. And really gave that kind of fundamental knowledge that was really helpful for I guess my background and my internship as well. And then also I took a class over at the law school called Climate Change and Financial Markets, which was taught by, or co-taught by Sarah Bloom Raskin, who y'all might be familiar, was actually nominated to the Federal Reserve last year. And so just kind of to your point about like being in this ecosystem with all of the wonderfully connected professors, like that to me was like a really amazing example where I was like kind of starstruck sitting in class every day.
Okay, so Brandon, we have a couple of questions in the chat. One, I think you'll probably be better at answering than me. So the question is, can WEMBA students, which is the weekend and evening MBA students, participate in the Energy Club, and are they able to attend in-person events?
Yeah, I think to the point about broader ecosystem here, that's something that more than welcome to, or WEMBA students are more than welcome to attend. I know we had a student who worked at Uplight, who is in the WEMBA program, had reached out to me, connected with a handful of students as well. So certainly welcome to come here.
The other thing is, I think we mentioned this, but part of Energy Week is the case competition, which is the Energy and Emerging Markets case competition. And in one of my teams, we had a GEMBA student from the Global Executive Program. So it was really cool to get to meet, someone who's like Fuqua affiliated, also doing their MBA, but is in a completely different program. And I think having that additional expertise and just industry knowledge was really valuable for that case competition.
Perfect.
Another question in the chat is, someone says, many of those clean tech companies sound really interesting. Are they generally open to taking on Fuqua students for internships? And what kind of experiences do students typically get working with them?
Wow, well, they got the perfect person to answer this question.
So yes, I think the answer to the question is yes. As a student, again, I found that speaking to different companies and having coffee chats and just really trying to understand like what types of careers you'd be interested in, people are really receptive to that. I don't know if it's because you have like a .edu email address or whatnot, but I have found that it's been really awesome. One of the how I got my internship with Charger Help was actually Camille Terry, who's the CEO, was actually a panelist at the Energy Conference, and I thought she was really just truly mind-blowing, and I still do to this day. But one of our colleagues, Alfonso, had helped to organize that panel, and so Alfonso kindly connected the two of us, and then I had talked to Camille about doing a mentored study opportunity, which is essentially an interim internship where the student gets class credit, but the company, like a startup or a VC or a nonprofit or something like that, doesn't have to pay for the services because you're getting class credit. And so I was able to do my mentored study with Charger Help, which I thought was just a truly unique experience. And it definitely was kind of the catalyst to help me to start building experiences within the energy and startup world, which was really valuable.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, I believe Camille Terry was added to the conference through Katie Cross, who's the Edge director here, and so just kind of echoes and underscores the connections that the faculty and staff here have here at this area.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's another question.
Yeah, wonderful.
Let's see. Okay, this is a great question, actually, which I don't think we've touched much about this. So for sustainability and climate change energy careers, is there a rigid recruiting process, or do you find that most students pursuing this sector have a lot of individual ownership? And I think my answer to that question is it depends, which is probably the worst MBA answer that anyone can ever receive. But I think it really depends on what type of career within this sector that you're pursuing. So for example, if you're pursuing investment banking and want to work at like Marathon Capital or Bank of America or Barclays or somewhere like that, that process of going through investment banking recruiting is extremely rigid and time intensive. But there's also a lot of support from other clubs as well. So the finance club has a lot of career recruiting and will help teach like the skills that you need to know to learn investment banking. And I think it's pretty similar with consulting as well, with all of the case studies and case prep and things like that you have to do if you wanted to work for like Accenture or Deloitte that have more like energy sustainability focused practices within their companies. But I think for like other companies like utilities or developers or even startups and venture capital, it's a little bit looser in that the timelines aren't as rigid, and I think you can garner a lot more support and advocacy and just learning through a number of different ways. You want to add on to that? Sure.
No, I think that's great. I think maybe to go through my recruiting journey, for instance, as an example, I was looking for more of the startup space, and so over the fall, when a lot of the people going in traditional industries were attending coffee chat or attending info sessions, reaching out for coffee chats, I was a little bit more reaching out to people on my own, kind of like in a similar way of what Jenna was saying, looking for those discussions. But not necessarily through a structured process. It was more of, I'm interested in this. Let me go reach out to the Net Power CFO and see if he's interested in going to coffee downtown. And to echo one other comment that Jenna was mentioning about how receptive people are, I think it might be general across the MBA programs that you're interested in, but I feel like particularly in the climate tech space, people are very interested and active and want to hear, want to provide that help, because we just know the scale of this challenge is so large and need everybody on board. So I was reaching out in this coffee chat way in the spring, just kind of monitoring all of the job boards that Katie Cross and the club was posting, and then finally dropping my application, and it ended up working out at TerraPower. But it was much more of an unstructured way. Yeah,
and I think that brings us to just like another, maybe we can talk about networking for a little bit, and extend that out to conferences too.
All right.
Because I don't think we've touched on ClimateCAP yet. So in terms of networking, I think like LinkedIn does a great job, again, reaching out to people, picking their brains about their career journeys, how they got there, what the, their favorite parts about their role are, what are the challenges. I think you and I, Brandon, we did a really nice job about just like giving ourselves time to explore once we started our MBA program, instead of just like jumping into like investment banking or consulting, or even just like careers that we weren't like fully sure we were interested in. So I think just giving yourself time to explore and network and like meet people and understand like what is it that you're actually interested in. I think that's super valuable. And then of course there are different employers, especially Energy Club sponsors, which maybe you can talk about in a little bit too, that come to Fuqua and we'll have different workshops or we'll sponsor the energy conference. And then there's also other conferences like ClimateCAP or the UNC Climate Summit and things like that, which are really great opportunities for you to go out and see like what else is offered, what are people talking about, what are companies interested in, and so there's just a lot of different avenues for networking and learning.
Yeah, so maybe to add two things on that. So one, I think it might have been posted in the chat or in the Q&A and the answers. But if you go to our website, just search Fuqua MBA Energy Club and click on the Prospective Students tab, we recently updated our FAQ, and so in there's a great link to a blog that Katie Cross puts out every summer that lists a sample size. I think it's close to but not fully exhaustive of where all students interested in energy, climate, and sustainability interned out this past summer. So can give that example of sometimes I feel like when you're scrolling through those job reports across the different universities, it can be difficult to understand where students really go. So we really recommend to check out that resource. And then in terms of ClimateCAP is coming up this weekend actually, so we're heading out there. But ClimateCAP is actually how I got introduced to Duke and Fuqua. I don't know if I've told you this, but when I was interested in becoming or pursuing my MBA, my company Dominion Energy was asked to speak at ClimateCAP when it was hosted at Darden, and my chief innovation officer asked me if I wanted to come along. At the time, he didn't know I was interested in MBA programs, but I was like, I get to come to this conference and meet all the potential students, and there were I think 30 or 40 Duke students there, which was by far the largest contingent. It was like well over 10% of the total conference, and swamped even the Darden students who were going there. And the thing that stood out to me was I was like kind of some random, basically just out of college person, analyst like level at Dominion working. But one of the alums there, Varun Saluja, who was a previous co-president of the Energy Club, we bonded over our mutual love for offshore wind. He just kind of took me under his wing while we were chatting there. So what stood out to me was not just the size of the contingent of people who are interested in energy and climate at Duke, but also just the welcomingness and that Team Fuqua attitude that people displayed at that event.
And for those that don't know, ClimateCAP was actually started at Fuqua, and it basically is this traveling conference, if you will. A different school hosts it every year, but it's basically an MBA-only conference that's focused on climate, energy, sustainability, and there's some like truly amazing panels that are usually topics that are really relevant to the year, and then a lot of networking opportunities. So last year we went to Kellogg in the dead of winter, and then this year is in Austin. So I think it'll be a nice change of pace. But yeah, it's a great conference and highly recommend. There's also a ClimateCAP Fellowship, which is new at Fuqua this year, and Mackenzie Audino is our ClimateCAP Fellow, and she is our oceans expert. So I think it'll be really cool to see like how that fellowship progresses as well.
I think we have two. I think Sarah Grace Tucker is another fellow. So 2 of the 12 ClimateCAP fellows are coming from Fuqua.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to potentially this last question?
Okay, cool. So the question is, does the club do anything to support your career? You want to start?
Sure. Well, actually, do you want to do the first overview, and then I can go into detail?
Sure.
Sorry.
Okay, so I think yes. So the club does a lot to support career growth and opportunities. I think there's structured sessions in the fall, especially to help kind of navigate the internship process. In addition, there's that EVCC industry group, which is a new way to kind of meet people who are like-minded, who are interested in the same types of careers, and just kind of be able to discuss like what's working, what's not working, like which companies have you reached out to, which people have been like really responsive and receptive. And then that group also meets multiple times throughout the year. So I think there's a number of like structured but also informal ways to receive career support.
Yeah, so shout out to Jenna for actually founding that and then being the kind of lead member of that over the course of the year. I feel like that's been a really wonderful resource, especially for the first year students. Additionally, one thing I wanted to mention, a lot of our students are interested in energy finance, and so this year the club is sponsoring a Pivotal 180 course, which is an online renewable energy financing course that goes kind of deep into Excel modeling and you're really helping people set up for their careers in banking or renewable energy development. And so this year we have 28 students signed up that'll be completing it over the course of this spring too. And we'll see that might not necessarily be something that's offered every year, but it's something that we're trying out this year and really hoping to continue forward. But overall, hopefully is an example of that broader support that the club hopes to offer.
Yeah, I've actually already started my course.
Nice.
Yeah.
Getting ahead of it.
Getting ahead of it. Okay, cool. There's another question. How does the club make sure that all students can contribute if some of the programs like ClimateCAP is competitive?
Yeah, that's a good question. So ClimateCAP is not necessarily competitive to be involved in from like a application perspective. It's open to all students. However, this year it was so oversubscribed by MBA students across the entire country that the tickets, I think there are about 250 or 300 tickets are available to students, and they sold out within 2 or 3 hours. So one thing that we tried to do is not necessarily competitive from an application standpoint, but from that demand perspective. Like we were posting in Slack, our broader Slack channel. We were like texting people individually, saying like, when the tickets open at 9:00, sign up. And so hopefully that helped help people get involved. We're sending 35 students to the event this upcoming week.
And then the EDGE program also has ClimateCAP scholarships as well. So they provide students who have financial need or whatnot with the opportunity to attend the conference. And the club also provides some funding for conference-related, lodging and airfare and things like that too. So I think it really helps from a budget perspective as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know you mentioned sponsorship earlier, so maybe we could take a quick section on that as we wrap up. But a big activity of the club is to raise money to support this broader energy week that we discussed earlier, the conference, the case competition. We're really kind of the financial hub for that. And then, so that's where the primary budget of the club goes, but also in support of traveling to conferences. So I believe we were able to get conference funding for not just ClimateCAP, but maybe 1 or 2 other additional.
Yeah. Last year I got funding for ClimateCAP, and then there was a conference that Camille from Charger Help organized called Culture and Climate, which was more focused on getting Black and Brown investors and founders from the community all together into one room. So I got to go to that conference, and luckily the Energy Club helped out with that as well. Okay. Another question. What has been your favorite class so far, and how did that prepare you for your internships? And then any advice for how to prepare before coming to Fuqua?
Well, I think we touched on a few classes a little bit earlier in the webinar, but just wanted to echo. I think in the chat we've posted a few links to a list of courses that you can explore here at Duke, and so really encourage you to take a look through some of those. What sort of courses are available within the energy and environment and the energy finance concentration. You mentioned EDGE. I think EDGE is my favorite courses we've gone through.
Yeah, it just provides like a very broad, holistic overview about like what's happening in the industry and the sector, like what are the problems, who are the players. That's definitely a favorite course for mine. But I think in terms of like what courses actually helped prepare me for my internship interviews, for me, I was recruiting for like more finance type roles, and so I think taking corporate finance and then energy markets and innovation, that class had a lot of really specific cases on like building pro formas for different classes, so for different cases. So for example, we had this one case where we had to analyze where we're building like a power plant or a gas plant or a composite renewable plant, like what would be the most effective in terms of like NPV, but also thinking about all of the other like regulatory issues and external factors. So I thought that was a really great course, and I was definitely able to leverage some of those learnings into my internship prep and interviews.
Wonderful. I think we've just about reached time, so thank you all for coming and attending or viewing it online on YouTube later. But we really hope that this gives you a broader picture of what the Energy Club does, what this broader energy ecosystem around Duke is. And so if you have any questions or follow up or want to learn a little bit more, feel free to reach out to us on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way to reach us. And also encourage you to check out the Duke MBA Energy Club website. We've got a lot of detailed FAQs there as well.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much for spending your time with us. Hopefully we answered all of your questions. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and see you next time, and hopefully see you at Fuqua.
Yeah, thank you.